All right, we're live. What's up, party people? It's your host, Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Thanks to our sponsors, Raz Rocket. Today, I'm joined by Pedro. He's the founder of Wallabi. How are you doing today, Pedro?
I'm doing very well, Sonny. It's a pleasure to meet you and hi to everybody out there.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm doing a little bit of housekeeping in the background here, but while we dive in, Pedro, why don't you share just a little bit about Wallaby? What you guys are doing there, just maybe one or two sentences, and then let's start with your backstory.
Yeah, we are a group of technology, data, AI experts that help our clients navigate their AI transformation journeys. In a nutshell, what we sell is the ability to move faster while our clients' competitors are still figuring out what to do with AI. It's a really good time to be doing what we're doing and have the background that we do because pretty much every business leader out there is has that urgency of needing to do something with AI but not quite knowing where to start. So we offer a mix of advisory and software development services to help them go through that journey.
Awesome, awesome. So Pedro, let's rewind a little bit. Excited to know. So I was reading that you grew up in Mexico. You studied computer science or computer systems engineering. So take me back. What was life like growing up in Monterey, and what first sparked your curiosity about technology?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a city called Mexicali, which is in the northwesternmost tip of the country. So if you think of Southern California, everybody thinks of beaches and palm trees, and but if you drive a couple of hours east into the desert, you get to this area called the Imperial Valley, which is very dry, arid, and that's where I grew up. The two things that Mexicali is known for is just terribly hot weather, just very, very hot climate, and amazing Chinese food. Like, actually, legitimately good Chinese food. I know that sounds really random to be in the middle of the northwestern Mexican desert, but there's a reason for that, which I can get into at a different time. That's where I grew up, just eating a lot of Chinese food, and I got into technology in a very early age. I like to say that Matthew Broderick is the reason why I got into technology. Because in the early 80s, there was this film called WarGames, it was about Matthew Broderick playing the role of this high school hacker. And I thought that was the most fascinating thing, and I wanted to do that. My parents got me a Commodore 64, and I taught myself to code, and I thought, that yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to work with computers. I want to work with technology. I was able to go to school in a really big engineering school in the country in a city called Monterrey, much bigger city than where I grew up. At that point, it was the third largest city in the country. Studied computer systems engineering, and that's when I discovered data. I learned that I had an aptitude and interest for all things data. And that sort of set me on the path that I am today. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me growing up. Um, Growing up on the border gives you a really interesting perspective of the world because you're sort of in between two cultures. Where I grew up, literally, you could, before we had the infamous wall, we had a fence, and you could just squeeze your hand through the fence, and your arm would be in the U.S. and the rest of your body would be in Mexico. Yeah, you kind of grow up of being a child of two cultures, I guess.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I was gonna go on a bit of tangent, but let's keep moving. I read that your journey into data started with the Commodore 64 and an obsession with the 80s movie, right? WarGames you were talking about. So what was it about that film and that computer that captivated young Pedro?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was a kid, that grew up in the age of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and sci-fi and Star Trek, and I think that had a lot to do with it. I just thought technology was really cool, and I thought it was really fun. And when I started building my own games on the Commodore 64, it felt very empowering. It was a way to tell stories, but also play at the same time. And in fact, I thought that's what I was going to be. I thought I was going to be a video game designer. And when I went to school to study computer engineering, I thought, yeah, this is what I want. I want to make video games. Um, Turns out I wasn't a huge fan of coding. I discovered data. And, when I came to organizing data and modeling, I realized I had a skill for it. And also the idea of organizing data and using it to make fact-based decisions just really appealed to me. There's some element of finding truth in chaos that I really enjoyed. And it was then that I knew, okay, I want to do something in this. And I interviewed for a company called MicroStrategy, which back in the mid to late 90s was part of a very small group of companies, essentially inventing what's now today known as the business intelligence space. And I was fortunate enough to get a job there when the company was still smaller and private. And it was a blast. It was a great time. It was a great company at a great time to join. I spent a long time there, did a lot of things. If you're familiar with the crypto space, which I believe you are, you now know MicroStrategy with a different name, Strategy. And Michael Saylor, he's like a Bitcoin rock star. But back then he was just Mike, our boss, and we were building a business intelligence data analytics company, not a Bitcoin company. That was decades in the future.
I happen to be obviously a big fanboy of sailors. In fact, I have no clue why, but he follows me. I'm one of 800 people that he follows on Twitter.
Yeah. I'll say this about Mike. He is a unique character, but without a doubt, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. It was quite an experience working for him and interacting with him. And all I know is, if Mike is interested in something, it's probably a good idea to pay attention.
And so how did those early, almost futuristic visions shape your own thinking about what data would become?
Well, over time, I started developing some perspectives or even convictions about how people used information for all of the efforts that we did. And then, companies that came after us, like Tableau came on the scene and completely revolutionized the space. Companies like that, for all of our efforts to try and expose more and more people to data and help them make better decisions with data. At the end of the day, it's always been a very exclusive club. Like, you need the barrier to entry to analytics remains high. You need a very specific skill set, familiarity with data technologies to become proficient with these types of tools. That always sort of rubbed me the wrong way. It was sort of, I guess, like an egalitarian element inside me that I always wanted this. I wanted it to be easier. I wanted it to be available to anybody, regardless of their background, their skill set, experience that they have with these technologies. And it always struck me how it never really, it wasn't that way. And the more clients that I worked with and talked to, I realized that they wanted something very similar. The industry sort of got stuck in this world of the dashboard, right? Where if a business leader has a question, their data team always replied with a dashboard, which is not always necessary. And in fact, it can be overkill. It can lead to excessive cognitive load. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with a data leader a few years ago, very colorful British gentleman, very animated, and used to curse a lot, and told me, Pedro, we have 8,000 dashboards. I don't need another bleeping dashboard, right? And it was such a vivid illustration of the problem that a lot of companies have. That they're drowning in reports and drowning in dashboards, but lack insights and still lack the ability to make decisions. And I thought, there's probably a better way to solve that. So that was sort of what started me on the path, not necessarily to Wallabi, but just thinking about there's probably a better way to do this.
So before you became a founder yourself, you spent, I believe, nearly 2 decades as an executive at some of the largest companies. You alluded to MicroStrategy. I believe you were at Google. So what did all of these years inside large organizations teach you about yourself that, maybe you didn't realize until you left?
Yeah, I was at a mix of startups, large companies. I was at Google. I was at Salesforce. Um, I think it was a very good education in different styles of leadership and different forms of corporate culture. Um, I was lucky enough to work in some of the best corporate cultures that I can imagine, anybody experiencing. Like the early days of MicroStrategy were fantastic. My time at Looker was terrific, and I tried to learn about the values of those leadership teams and how they built those cultures, how they built an environment where people felt they could contribute, they felt valued, and they felt supported. And that always felt very important. That became very important to me as a leader. And I've also been at places where that's not the case. And the types of places where managing up is a more valuable skill than managing down, right? And self-preservation is a better way to succeed than making your team look good, right? And those experiences sort of taught me about the type of person, the type of professional, the type of leader that I want to be. And that's something that I have a lot of clarity about. And it's something that I've tried to incorporate as we build Wallabi.
And so after 25 years of climbing the proverbial corporate ladder, where were you, at what moment did you say, I need to go build something on my own? Was it like a gradual burn or a lightning bolt?
I was at Salesforce running the Tableau team
Mm.
when ChatGPT came into the mainstream, like November 2022. And for those of us who come from the data analytics world, AI meant something very different. AI used to mean machine learning. K means clustering and those sorts of things. Just by virtue of being in data analytics, you're sort of exposed to that world. But this was something new, generative AI, and that I wasn't familiar with. But I had the good fortune of working with a team of brilliant AI people that Tableau had acquired not too long before I joined. And these were people that have been working in the space in natural language for years. And you need to talk about PhDs who have seen anything and everything. The type of people that you can't really impress anymore, that are very good at sort of sorting through the BS, through the hype, right? And I remember one of them said, Pedro, this is a miracle. And when they said that, I knew, okay, this is real. Like, this is not hype. There's something of real substance behind this that I think is going to change a lot of things. This could be another, internet moment, another electric motor moment, right? And we're learning that it is becoming that, or has become that. And that's where the gears really started turning, and that there's probably an opportunity to do something really special in this era that we're in.
So you've said that the inspiration to become an entrepreneur came from recognizing a disruption moment in the data and analytics industry. Can you unpack that? What specifically did you see that the big players were missing?
Um, and it's easy to say, like, oh, I had this in amazing foresight, right? The reality, I think, is very different. It doesn't really work that way, at least in my case. It wasn't like I had a clear vision of what was going to happen. I just sort of knew there's something is going to happen. Things are going to change. I experienced it in my career, not to such a degree, when the business intelligence industry shifted from the legacy original, sort of like more IT oriented platforms like MicroStrategy, to the more, end user driven tools like Tableau and that point Click and later Looker, I noticed an industry completely shifting. And it felt like that. It had elements of that again. It had elements of the things that I saw, I guess at that point it was 10, 15 years before. But I wasn't quite sure what it was. Now that vision becomes clearer over time as you partner with the right people. I was lucky enough to work with just some brilliant people who are now my co-founders in my team. And working together with them, that vision starts to become clearer over time as you try a number of things, as you work with clients. That's really the most important thing. The more you work with clients or potential clients, the more you start really finding where the pull is, and the more your vision starts becoming clearer. And what that vision was for us is we're moving into a world where the relevancy of SaaS applications is going to come into question. In a world where it's becoming much easier, faster, and cheaper to build your own experiences, use whatever term you want, vibe coding or whatever term you want to use. In a world like that, you have to wonder, why would companies spend millions of dollars in license fees and consulting fees for the big platforms out there, CRMs, HR systems, and they could just build their own, right? And there's still a gap today between prototyping something on Lovable or N8N and building a production quality application, but that gap is shortening every day at an incredibly fast rate of speed. We're not very far away from the day when a small team will actually be able to say, you know what, yeah, we're not going to buy the CRM. We're just going to pull something together that's just for us, for our business logic, our data, our systems, and that works just for us. And we don't need to pay for 80% of features that we're never going to use anyway. That is a massively different world to the one that we're living in today. And if I were one of those big platforms, I'd be really worried. Because it's a serious shift in how the world sees you and how your business works. So that's sort of the vision that we got to, and how we've tried to position our company to be well positioned to succeed in that new world. And that's ultimately what Wallabi is. Wallabi is a platform that is going to allow teams or even individuals to build their own business workflows on top of their existing data stacks, easier, faster, and cheaper than if having to buy something off the shelf.
Interesting. So you said there's a massive gap between the delivery of an insight and a business outcome. So the dashboards show you what is happening, but not why or what to do next. How does Wallabi close that gap in a way that existing tools like Tableau or Looker don't?
Well, the first question is, why does it have to be a dashboard, right? Business leaders have so many questions where you don't need a dashboard, right? I need to know, are we going to hit our target this quarter? Like, don't hit me with this, screen of heat maps and charts and graphs that I have to decipher and connect the dots between them, right? Just give me an answer. So that's problem number one, is that the dashboard is not the right answer for every single question. In fact, I would even say it's not the right answer for most questions. I'm not saying it doesn't have a role. It does. I'm not part of that crew that says dashboards are dead. No, dashboards are not dead. They have an important role to play. But it's not the only way to solve questions. It's not the only way to present information. That's number one, is just how easy it is to decipher the way in which information is fed. The reality is dashboards are not always the easiest to decipher for a lot of people, right? The other thing, like you said, is that dashboards, for the most part, are a monitoring tool. They tell you what's happening. If you need to understand, okay, what do I do about it? Or the so what, they're often not the best tool. And then lastly, the context is very limited, because dashboards operate on top of your, existing structured data systems. And we're now in a world where there is so much important knowledge that exists outside of these systems, outside of your data warehouse, outside of your data lake, in conversations, in documents, in tribal knowledge, right? That often is even more important than what's in those systems. So how do you harness all that other information that doesn't exist in those systems to try and present information that leads to a better decision? Dashboards don't do that either.
One of your clients called you guys the Navy SEALs of AI. I mean, that's quite a compliment. What do you think helped you earn that kind of trust from companies who are used to working with much bigger consulting firms?
Yeah, we were pretty delighted. One of my co-founders is an Army veteran, so he wasn't particularly thrilled about the Navy SEALs aspect, but the sentiment was well appreciated for sure. I think what that showed is that we bring a very grounded and real approach to AI. We're cautious about not being AI sycophants. We believe in AI. We believe in its transformative potential, but we don't. Just like we don't want to apply a dashboard to every single question. Sometimes, you don't need to apply AI to every single problem, right? So the type of work that we do, it doesn't begin as an AI initiative. It begins as a business transformation initiative. Our approach is pretty holistic. We understand the client's business from the perspective of people, their teams, from the perspective of their processes, and of course the technology. And bringing all that together, we can identify the use cases, the workflows where that are suited for optimization or for innovation, and then bring technologies in there as appropriate. Sometimes it's AI, often it is AI nowadays, but sometimes it's very traditional data work, right? Where you have to bring different systems together and organize them and present them to the client in a way that they've never seen before. And then you hear clients say, oh, wow, we had been asking the wrong questions all this time. Because now it's the first time that they actually see the business the way that we're showing it to them.
Interesting. Wow, that flew by quite quickly. So maybe you help me land the plane with this one, Pedro. So you've said that some people chase the founder lifestyle, but for you, it was an obsession with a problem you couldn't stop thinking about. So if we're sitting here, let's say 5 years from now, you come back on the show, what does success look like for Wallabi and for you personally?
I think I'll talk about Wallabi first. We're in a pretty exciting moment for the company. The business is growing. We're signing up new clients. Our clients are happy. The team is motivated and excited. And that comes from the success we're having with the clients that we work with, where we are helping them transform their business into something that it wasn't before, identify new revenue streams, create new capabilities, new products, new way to serve their customers. And when you hear them say, oh, wow, I had never looked at my business this way, that's pretty gratifying, right? So more of that is what we're looking for. And when we get to a point where clients can leverage our services and our technology to completely transform what they do, I think that's going to be success. For me personally, it's very satisfying to me to be a part of it. I am surrounded by a fantastic team, and I'm lucky that these are just incredibly brilliant people that are very, very good at their jobs, and I just try to do what I can to help them, and I guess stay out of the way as much as possible.
I like that. Well, thank you, Pedro, for your time. You were very gracious, and yeah, I learned a lot from this interview. So thanks for that. And with that said, we'll bring this live stream to an end. Would love to have you back on, Pedro, maybe on a future episode. I only got through maybe half of my questions I had for you. And thank you all for tuning in. Until next time. Cheers.
Thank you.